You guys know this. You've heard this story. I've told it a million times. It's probably, you're like, oh God, here goes Chris with the grandmother story. She is a surviving spouse of a World War II veteran. My grandfather fought at the Battle of the Bulge. Horrible, horrible, nasty battle. A lot of folks did not make it through that battle, and the folks that did came back pretty bad shape, physically, mentally. My grandfather came back and died of his wounds that he suffered in that battle. My grandmother at the time had 5 young kids, went into the VA and said, I need help. I heard there's this thing called the widow's pension. What they told her was, no, nothing available. Take your husband's Social Security payments for death, and that's better than anything you'll get from the VA, and be happy. That's what they told her. And she had 5 kids to raise. There wasn't near the information that was out there 50 years ago that there is today. It was more than 50 years ago. But you get my point. Back in the 50s and 60s, there was not a whole lot of information like this out there. So you believed what the VA told you. People were coming out of that World War II era believing their government bureaucracies. Turns out, it was bullshit. It was just nonsense. After my grandmother passed away, I got an opportunity to look into my grandfather's file. She would have been eligible for a lot of years of dependency indemnity compensation. Probably a couple $100,000 over a couple of decades. That would have changed her life because she died. And I mean this with all literalness, she did not have 2 nickels to rub together. I don't even think that there was $1 in her bank account. She had a very, very rough time. She was one of the sweetest people you ever want to meet. Actually, she was kind of mean sometimes, but not to us. We called her Grambo. Man, I want to tell the Grambo story, but I can't do it because I got to keep going. So somebody remind me someday. It involves George Brett, so I'm building up a lot of suspense on this one. But anyway, that kind of pissed me off when I learned that because you got the VA lying to survivor. It's one thing to lie to a veteran. You know, as I told you, 2,500 years of history, we're expecting to be cheated out of our benefits. It's kind of part and parcel of the territory of going to war, serving your country, coming out and becoming a veteran. You're going to get cheated by the government. It's just the way of life. But don't mess with our spouses. Don't mess with our kids. Take care of them, right? You think that's the way it should be? No, they get lied to all the time. All the time. That's why one of the steps of the 8 ways to improve your VA disability claim is taking care of your survivors, because there's things that you can do now, today, as a veteran that ensures that they can't screw with your surviving spouse or your kids or your adult disabled children. Here's the deal. This is happening a lot, and I will tell you the number one target of opportunity for these lies are Vietnam, the surviving spouses of Vietnam veterans, Vietnam-era veterans that served in Thailand, that served in Korea, or that served in the Republic of Vietnam. This is the number one target of opportunity for these lies. It's the same scenario I just told you with my grandmother, is that the spouse, the surviving spouse, goes to the VA and says, my husband, or in some cases my wife, and that's happening, we're seeing that a lot with OEF and OIF vets, is that the wife goes in and says, the veteran passed away, or the husband goes in and says, my wife passed away. And the VA, they think it's a VA employee. What it really is a VSO, a veteran service officer from an organization, tells them, and I'm not saying it's all organizations, there's some that don't do this, there's many that don't do this. There's a couple that do it notoriously because of a lack of training, but a lot of folks, the point is, think that these VSO representatives are actually employees of the VA, so they give it a little bit of extra credibility. And the first lie that the survivor is told is that if your husband or your wife, the veteran, was not getting medical care at the VA, you can't file a claim. Who thinks that's true? No. There's no such thing. There's not even a rule close to that. What that is, as best as I can figure, is you've got a VSO that the only way that that VSO knows how to prove a claim is by calling the VA Medical Center, getting some records, and giving them to the VA and letting them do the hard work. And if that's the kind of VSO you've got on your claim, you need to drop that shit like a hot potato, because there are better VSOs out there that will actually work your case, take interest in your case, be curious about your injury enough to research it, ways to prove it, and do work, and not just dump medical records. And so what that VSO who tells a survivor that has done is he has let him or herself believe that you need VA medical records in order to win a VA claim or file a VA claim, as one veteran in Virginia was told, one veteran's surviving spouse in Virginia was told. It's not true. So if you're a veteran, let your surviving spouse know. Take an index card and write these things down and put them in a safe deposit box. If you weren't getting VA medical care, your surviving spouse can still file surviving spouse benefits claims. And there's three big ones on the benefit side. There's a lot of them out there. A lot of them, from cemetery benefits, from final death medical reimbursement. But the big ones that I'm talking about, because they're the high dollar ones that change lives, are accrued benefits, substitution, and DIC. I'm not going to go into detail on them here because we could spend hours, and we will spend hours on those topics. But for right now, take an index card out, put this in the safe deposit box, and say, just because I didn't get care at the VA doesn't mean you can't file a claim. File a claim. 21-534 is the form you use, right? Well, not if you go to a VSO in Tennessee, where the VSO will tell you VA Form 21-534 is no longer being accepted by the VA for accrued benefits and DIC claims. I don't even know where you get this stuff. I don't even have any clue where that comes from. 21-534 is still 100% valid. It's still a good form. Use it even if it wasn't a good form. You could still use it to express exactly what you want to file. If you submit that 534, if it's an invalid form, they're going to come back and say, we got your claim, you used the wrong form, here's the right form. It may take them 9.5 months to do it, but use the form. It's the right form. 21-534, there's an EZ form if you want to fill out the shortened version, but that's how you request DIC accrued benefits from the VA as a surviving spouse. If you're within a year of your spouse passing away, there's a form that you can use. I don't remember the number off the top of my head here, but there's a substitution form where you can substitute as if you were the veteran. So use that form. File it. There's a little known rule out there that if you apply for Social Security death benefits, that it also is a claim for VA death benefits. I wouldn't want to be in a position of arguing that rule because I just don't know how thorough the Social Security Administration is in keeping records. I don't do those cases. The only interaction I have with the Social Security agency is when we request a file for one of our clients, or every year when I get that goofy form in the mail that tells me how much I'm not going to get when I'm not 75. So just file a claim. File the claim, use 21-534. Another lie, another myth that these folks will tell you is that if the veteran didn't make a claim while he or she was living, the survivor can't make a claim. Who thinks that's true? Yeah, it's not. It's 100% false. You have an opportunity to file a claim for service connection of the cause of death of the veteran, regardless of whether or not the veteran filed it in their lifetime. The reg actually says that you're entitled to benefits, to DIC, for benefits that were or should have been granted during the veteran's lifetime. And that right there has been interpreted to mean that you can file a claim for service connection of cause of death even after the veteran's passed. It's a narrow window, and it can be challenging, but you can do it. Another lie that they tell, and this is the one that boils my blood, and I heard it directly from an Albuquerque regional office DRO, and it's one of those times where I said some stuff that I regretted. I should have bit my tongue and just wrote it down and put it in the shredder and let it go, because we ultimately won the case. The myth, the lie, in this case the utter nonsense, is that a survivor cannot file an application for benefits unless the veteran signs it. Think about that for a minute. And think how a deceased veteran is going to sign a form. Yeah, it's nonsense, but I've heard it come out of the Albuquerque regional office. We just had a story where it came out the last 2 weeks. I've heard this story twice from Tennessee and from Virginia VSOs. So, and we know which ones they are, and we're working those angles. Probably we'll have to wait until we get these claims for the survivors out of their book, basically, hopefully either granted or into appeal phase, and then they're off the VSO's books, and then there won't be the retaliation that you get when you call some of these incompetent VSOs. Now, I just want to be 100% clear, folks. There are some rock-solid, awesome VSOs out there. Go online, get my How to Choose an Attorney ebook. It's free. The ebook is 100% free. If you want to buy a copy of the paperback book, you can go on there. There's a link that'll be in the show notes. You can buy it. It's a couple of bucks, but that's all the publisher that does the hard copy of that book. I don't have any control of that. Use the questions in there that I tell you to use to ask when vetting a lawyer. Use those questions when choosing your VSO. Same questions, because they're going to tell you whether you got someone that knows what they're talking about, that's going to be dedicated to your case, that wants to see success for you, that wants to help you, and you're not just going to be a number or a file in their cabinet while they're out, buying new hats for the bar or whatever VSOs do with those yellow hats. Sorry, yellow-hatted people. I do not mean to offend. I'm just making fun of yellow hats today. In any event, there are some awesome VSOs out there. I am not saying that all VSOs are incompetent, but there are a few out there that do not need to be doing this work. And the ones that we heard about that are telling veterans, survivors, that the veteran needs to sign the form in order to apply for survivor benefits, they need to move the hell down the road. They need to just move on down the road to another job. That is flat out not true. And if you are told that, contact me right away, because I take action on those quick. All right, here's another one. DIC has an income qualification component. The way they say it is you make too much money to get benefits as a survivor. That's partially true. There's one type of benefit called the Non-Service-Connected Survivor's Pension, or in the old day it was called the Non-Service-Connected Widow's Pension, that is need-based. All right, and that need base is, I think it's $7,094 a year after deductions, and it's convoluted. You got to go through this whole process of offsetting debt, but you basically got to be dirt poor, and that is only going to give you the difference between your actual annual income and $7,094 or whatever it actually is. So if you make $5,000 a year, the VA is going to give you $2,094 a year. It's not a lot. In some cases, for really, really bad off survivors, that benefit can be a huge difference. And the VA knows that, and they move quick on those cases. The non-service-connected pension for veterans and the non-service-connected pension for survivors move pretty quick, because they know that in those cases, that money is life or death. But for any other survivor's benefit, DIC, accrued benefits, substitution, you can be making $1 million a minute. $1 million a minute. You could be making $20 billion. You could own Goldman Sachs, Wells Fargo, Bank of America. You could own all of them. You could own all the Facebook stock in the world, sell it every day, buy it again, sell it every day, make all that money, and you're still eligible for survivor benefits. Now, if you're buying Facebook stock today and selling it tomorrow and then buying it the next day, then you're getting into the wash sale rules, and you're probably not going to make any money. But my point is, there is no income requirement for dependency indemnity compensation, or DIC. It's about $1,200, $1,215 a month. There's some aid and attendance that can be added onto it. There's no income requirement. There is no income requirement for accrued benefits. Accrued benefits are benefits that should have been paid to the veteran during the lifetime in a pending claim or appeal. If you got a pending claim or appeal going, survivor can step into that under substitution theories, or even 1 year. I think it's up to 1 year they can jump back in and accrue benefits if it's prior to the substitution regs, but they can get the benefits that accrued during the veteran's lifetime. There is none, no income requirement or limitation for those benefits, only for the non-service-connected widow's pension. Here's another one, and this one is told a lot to surviving spouses of veterans that served during the Vietnam era and Korea, Thailand. That your husband couldn't have been exposed to Agent Orange because he didn't serve boots on the ground in Vietnam. We've got a case out of Winston-Salem Regional Office where it was almost months after the rule came out that said, back in 10 or 12, where they said that we're going to concede exposure along the perimeter for dog handlers, MPs, and a couple other scenarios. They were going to concede exposure. Right after that came out, enough time for it to circulate through the system, they told our client that she was not eligible because the VA doesn't believe that Agent Orange was used in Thailand. She showed them that FAST letter, and they still said, no, that's not right. So if somebody tells you, as a surviving spouse, that you're not eligible for survivor benefits because your Vietnam-era husband, or in some cases your Vietnam-era wife, did not get exposed to Agent Orange in the Republic of Vietnam, that you're not eligible to survivor benefits because of that you're not eligible for survivor benefits because of that, they are wrong. Don't believe it. It is nonsense, and it is a good signal that you should not work with that person because they don't know what they're talking about. I can forgive that one a little bit because a lot of times some of these bigger VSOs, the training money doesn't always trickle down to the folks that are on the ground, and so they find out about these things. Sometimes it's a year or two down the road. And that's just a fact of life. Hopefully there's some VSOs. I know there's a lot of VSOs that watch this blog. There's a couple of VSOs that I work with to keep them current on the law. I'm trying to come up with a system that we can have something a little bit more solid for VSOs. But a lot of times that information does come out, and there's some real good ones that do circle back around and say, I was wrong. It happens, and there's good VSOs out there. But there are some folks out there that they believe in their head that things are as they were in 1972, and they're not going to change. So if somebody tells you that there's no Agent Orange exposure rules for serving on a Royal Thai Air Force base during the Vietnam era, and that if your husband or wife was one of the veterans that served on one of those bases, you don't get an eligibility for survivor benefits because they didn't serve in the Republic of Vietnam, just know that you're either dealing with somebody that doesn't know what they're talking about or that's not keeping current on the law. Because that thing is 7 years old or 5 years old. I can't remember if it was 2010 or 12 that rule was issued. But either way, it's old enough now that everybody that does this stuff day in and day out should know about it. All right, the other one that they tell you is this is the one I told you about at the beginning. Just take the veterans' Social Security death benefits because it's more than your survivor benefits will be, so just take it and be happy. And that is told a lot. And the only benefit that the Social Security disability benefits are probably more than are the non-service-connected pension benefits. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about DIC and we're talking about accrued benefits. And those are pretty significant claims. DIC, there's 3 ways to prove it. I'm not going to go into all of them here. Generally speaking, when a veteran dies from a condition that was or should have been service-connected during their lifetime, under certain scenarios, you're eligible for dependency and indemnity compensation, which is a monthly stipend that you get. Now it's currently $1,215 a month, I think. It's over $1,200 now. It might be $1,234 or $1,243. It's somewhere up there with the cost of living changes recently. But it's a significant amount of money each month, and that's paid until the day you die or until you remarry. That's pretty significant. There is no Social Security death benefit that's that big. Accrued benefits. Some of these cases for accrued benefits, there's a lot of past due. A lot of past due out there. There have been a couple cases my firm has handled for survivors where we have recovered $250,000 or $350,000 in past due benefits for those spouses. That's a lot of money. Way more than Social Security death benefits, right? Accrued benefits occur when you've got a pending claim or appeal at the time of the veteran's death. It used to be the old rules. The survivor could claim accrued benefits within 1 year of the veteran's death, and then they could finish proving up the claim. They were limited to what was in the file at the time of death. The new rules recognize the problems with that, and it's called substitution. So within a year after the death of a veteran, a survivor can step in as if the survivor was the veteran, can add evidence to the file, can add new arguments, can handle that claim as if they were the survivor. So if somebody tries to tell you that accrued benefits are not going to be more than Social Security death benefits, again, walk away. Now there's a case if your accrued benefits were 20% for hearing loss and tinnitus and a couple of scars for 1 month because the claim was filed 1 month before the veteran passed, maybe that non-service-connected pension is going to be more than that, but it's rare that you see an accrued benefits case that makes less than Social Security death benefits. So that's nonsense. In any event, the last one that they tell to surviving spouses is that the claim died with the veteran. And That is 100% lie. 100%. Don't believe it. We've talked about a number of scenarios in the last, 30 minutes. Number of scenarios where a surviving spouse can continue a claim, can continue appeal, can start a claim after the veteran's passed. The veteran's claim does not die with them. The only time a veteran's claim dies with them is when they do not have an eligible survivor. And there's several kinds of eligible survivors. Spouse is an obvious one. Another, indigent parents. And I'm not going to get into that. It's complicated math rules, and it's going to take this video and into a long sort of conversation. But just know that indigent parents, in some cases, can get that survival benefit. And certain children over the age of 18, and they call them adult helpless or helpless adult children. I hate that phrase. I hate it because I know a couple of these folks. We have, as one of our clients, the 62-year-old now, I think, son of a World War II veteran who passed away several years ago. And he has a cognitive impairment, cannot take care of himself, needs daily help with his daily living activities, but he is not helpless. And it's demeaning to call him that, I think. So I really, truly wish that the VA would just call that adult disabled survivors, adult disabled dependents, something other than helpless adult child. For the love of God, we don't need to insult people the way we name benefits. But that's another rant for another day. There's the only way that a veteran's claim dies with them is if they do not have an eligible survivor. And in some cases, there may be a way around that. But I'm not going to get into that here. Certainly not going to get into that too much because it's a really rare set of circumstances.